Tens of thousands of firearms are stolen each and every year. And in this video, for I think the first time ever, I'm going to be breaking down the statistics about where you are most at risk and what you can do to protect yourself from it. So guys, let's get into it. So to understand where you are most at risk of having your gun stolen, other than from politicians, we need to unpack a few key statistics because shockingly, the threat of being robbed is not the same in rural, suburban, and urban America. I know, hopefully you weren't driving or operating heavy machinery when I said that. And the stats prove it. So here's what we are quickly going to do. We're going to figure out where are the guns, where are the robberies and burglaries, and then we're going to combine those numbers to come up for kind of a threat ratio of how many thefts or burglaries happen per firearm in suburban versus urban versus rural America. And as an ex-state prosecutor, I'm going to walk you through some tips that I have seen to not be the guy who's the victim. Got it? So let's begin with who owns guns in America. Based on geography, in rural areas, about 47% of adults are gun owners. And I've seen this higher, so this is like the conservative number, okay? That's nearly half of the adult population. In the suburbs, ownership rates drop to about 30%. I've also seen that higher, closer to 40 to 43. So I'm taking the lowest, most conservative numbers. It falls even further in urban, big city environments to about 19%. I'm just gonna throw in there, I've seen that as high as about 25% in some markets, okay, in some studies. But I'm taking all the low-end ones just to remain consistent, and those are generally the most accepted ones based on the most studies. Now, these numbers are more than just statistics. They represent a deep, obviously deep cultural divide, as well as a practical relationships between firearms based on geography, lifestyle, and demographics. We're not really touching that right now, just to be clear. When we analyze overall firearm density, rural America once again leads with approximately 2.1 guns per person. Suburban America clocks about 1.1 guns per person, and urban America averages just about 0.5 guns per person. On the whole, this breaks out to about 1.2 guns per person in America. Why is there such a disparity? Well, the answer is clear. Rural gun owners are not just more likely to own guns in the first place, which they are, they're far more likely to own multiple firearms at the same time. In fact, 75% of rural gun owners possess more than one firearm. In cities, by contrast, less than half, just 48% of people own multiple guns. 75% rural, 48% urban. When it comes to firearm owners, do they own more than one? All right, so now let's talk about crime. And by the way, just a little thing that I always run into as a defense attorney, ex-prosecutor. When we're talking about robbery versus burglary, a lot of people use these terms interchangeably. They are not interchangeable. If someone goes up and sticks a gun or a knife or whatever in your face, that is a robbery. If they break into your home or your business, your car, that is a burglary. I don't really care, but hopefully you just learned something. So what was not hard to find was the number of incidents in a certain area. In other words, the number of gun thefts in rural versus suburban versus urban America. That was not terribly difficult. What was more difficult was then adjusting those numbers, given the fact that we have way more firearms per person, per capita, in rural America versus urban America. Because if there's a lot more instances of firearms being stolen, which is true, way more instances in urban America versus rural America, but we have about 4 times as many guns per person in rural America, you can see how, look, even though we can just generically stare at the numbers and say, oh, people are more at risk of having their firearms stolen in urban America, that's only half the story because there's about less than a quarter as many guns at the end of the day. We did a bunch of math. I know that's scary. I won't bore you with it. And here's what we got. Annually in rural America, just 1 out of every 2,783 firearms are stolen. That's a theft rate, if you're doing math, of about 0.00036 per gun. Or if you're a percentile person, we're talking about 0.036 of a percent chance that a firearm will be stolen. Suburban firearm theft is much more common. We're talking 1 out of every about 1,750. So rural was 2,783. Now we're down to 1,750. That's about 0.00057 or 0.057% chance that a firearm will be stolen just existing in suburban America. However, in urban America, we're talking major metropolitan areas, the risk jumps. The theft rate climbs to 0.00. There's 2 zeros instead of 3. 00214. So in other words, that is 0.214%. That's roughly 1 out of every 467 guns. So rural, 2,783. Suburban, about 1,750. Urban, 467, making an urban firearm about 6 times more likely to be stolen than a rural one. So now this next part is also very important. Where do these thefts happen? The breakdown is frankly eye-opening. By 2022, a clear majority, 51% of all stolen guns, were taken from, can you guess? Motor vehicles, surpassing all other categories. And it's not even close. Of these, cars parked at residences are the single largest subset, representing about 18.4% of all thefts nationwide. That means that most common way that a gun is stolen in America today is from a vehicle, usually parked at the owner's home or in the driveway, something like that. Another 16.3% of thefts happen in parking lots and garages, and 10.2% of thefts happen on public roads or highways. There is a significant unknown category here within vehicle thefts, but the unambiguous message from the data is this: vehicles have become the most vulnerable, high-risk location for gun theft. Now compare that to homes. Just 14% of gun thefts now result from burglaries, a dramatic drop from about 38% nearly a decade ago, which really isn't that long ago. It's a huge shift in criminal behavior. Vehicle thefts, which made up just 26% of thefts 10 years ago, now account for the majority. So vehicle thefts have doubled. Home thefts have more than fallen by half. Okay, this reflects a seismic behavioral shift among both gun owners and criminals. Commercial locations, we're talking gun dealers and other businesses, account for just 8% of thefts, with, I'm sure, FedEx accounting for their fair share of lost packages. We've done that video, not covering it again here, but there it is. With only 3% coming directly from federally firearms licensed dealers. Direct robberies, where you're seeing these videos on, where a firearm is snatched from the owner's person, their pocket, their holster, whatever, despite what you see, tend to be extremely rare. They make up just 2% of all cases, though they are certainly dramatic and typically very, very, very preventable. I mean, these are all preventable to some degree or another, but holy smokes, this last one, having it snatched from your pocket or your person, is super preventable. Guys, if you're in a high-risk zone, which according to the statistics is basically urban America, if you're in a high-risk zone where your firearm is more than 6 times more likely to be stolen, as opposed to if you just drive out to the country somewhere, maybe just having it loosely in your pocket where people can see it and easily grab it while you're not maintaining any kind of situational awareness, kind of a bad call. You wouldn't do that with your cash, so why do that with your gun, right? Same thing if you've got crappy holsters or something like that, or you're doing a poor job of concealed carrying. What you have to understand is that a lot of people think that this is going to be a deterrent. It may be a deterrent, maybe, if you are acting like it and activating it. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the fact that it might be a deterrent to bad people doing bad things. If you are vigilant about your surroundings, you keep people away from you, all of that kind of stuff. The simple fact is that a lot of these people who are choosing to, this isn't an open carry versus concealed carry thing. This is a well-carried firearm versus a poorly carried firearm thing. If you're going to be poorly carrying your firearm, don't do it in these sorts of areas because you make yourself a target. The predators who are out there who are attacking you, they understand what they are looking for in order to make an easy mark. They're looking for somebody who's got divided attention, isn't aware of their surroundings, doesn't know who's behind them or how close they are. And what's common to all these different scenarios you're seeing in videos? That precisely same thing. Parking lots, gas stations, retail, things where you have to engage and do multiple things at once, often involving your hands and always involving your attention, that is where you are most at risk. This is where, if this is the wild, this is the watering hole where the hunters lurk, where the lions, the leopards, the anaconda, the jaguar, the whatever. This is where the bad guys are hunting the zebras, the wildebeest, the monkeys, the whatever that's out there, okay? Don't fall for it. Be vigilant. Don't be one of the people showing up in these videos, which, as far as I'm concerned, is just shame videos, because these are just super preventable. Don't be that guy. Also, I can tell you from my own personal experience, as I mentioned before, an ex-state criminal prosecutor, oftentimes the people who are breaking into your home to steal your firearms while you're at work or on vacation, they knew that they were there. That's the cases I've seen. Why and how? It has to do with loose lips sink ships. You've got that nephew who you're trying to get them into firearms, or you want to take them hunting or something like that. Well, guess what? That person now knows you have firearms in their home. And maybe they go down a bad track as a teenager, as a 20-something, something like that. And they start saying to people, hey, I know where we can get guns. And they can kind of figure out when you're at work, when you're not at work, through asking their parents or other people. I've seen that exact scenario play itself out, okay? And on more than one occasion, unfortunately. So these cousins, these nephews, the friends of your kids, all this kind of stuff. The Glock sticker that you put on your truck is advertising, I have guns at home, follow me back to see where they are, right? A lot of people confuse that this is a deterrent. It is for many, no doubt, but it's also an invitation to others who are stupid enough, desperate enough to try. Be sure to hit that like button before we get to our ever popular quote of the day. Let me know what you think about all this down below. And we're going to close out with that quote of the day. This one comes from Home Security, a practical guide to preventing break-ins and protecting your property. Quote, there is no perfect protection, but there is the perfect decision to be prepared. I'm going to link that down in the description box below. I appreciate you sticking around. I look forward to reading, as always, the raucous discussion, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one, please feel free to check out some of our other great content, and we'll see you in the next one.